Hello and welcome to How to LMMS. Today I'm going to be talking about future bass and how to make it in LMMS. So future bass is like trap with large chords. So I'm going to start off by making a beat using native samples because I would be using downloaded samples if I was making it for a song, but as this is an LMMS tutorial, I thought I would use LMMS drums. So let's pick a kick. I'm going to make it in the way that I make drums, but you can use the beat and bassline editor to make your beats. Just look at a different video for that. So let's pick some hats and the rest of the drums. So now I've got a collection of drums. The LMMS project will already be set at 140 beats per minute, and that is the sort of tempo that you'll be working at, but you know, it does vary, just like every genre. I'll remove these default tracks. So I've got a simple kick pattern, which will repeat every 4 bars. Now to move on to hats, and I thought I would record this part. So you'll want to, even though you'll be editing the hats afterwards, the rhythm of the hats is very important, especially for this sort of beat. So I would have something like you want to set the quantize to something other than 1/16, something faster than that, in order to make the hats sound like they're blending together. So, for example, I can only place a beat here or here. If I change the quantize up here by clicking on it, that means that I can place notes in any of these. And if I change it to 1/64, yep. So in order to make my beat a little bit more interesting and more trap-like, I will add in some hats in between each of these beats. At 140, 1/32 is probably enough. And that will repeat every 2 bars. So as you can see, it works like that. So now to add some snares. And some claps, because claps really change the sound of the snare in trap music and in future bass. So I've got this beat. All of these snares are exactly the same, and the claps, and I'll get into editing those slightly later. I'll add some more hats to thicken out the rhythms. So now I've got these hi-hats underlying. And I'm going to add these to the effects mixer. This will help me to organize the sounds together and add effects to all of them together. So just naming these according to the first letter, the snare being the claps and the snare together, because they will all work together. C being for cymbal if I were to add cymbals later on. Okay, so first of all, add each track to the FX mixer. Now I have each of these tracks as part of the effects mixer. First thing I'm going to do is put this in a loop and add a reverb to the snare. And then a reverb to the hats. I'll also add an EQ to get rid of the lower frequencies. Okay, so now I've got a beat. I will want to add some chords, because that's what future bass is very much based around. So if I go into the Zin folders, if you go into miscellaneous, you'll get these super saw presets, and those are the easiest to start off with. So like this one. Just make some chords. Now these chords have slightly too much decay and not enough sustain, as in they drop down to a low point in volume and of the filter too quickly. So I'm going to go into Zin Add Sub Effects to edit the instrument. This is quite complicated, I don't know my way around it too much, but I just end up playing about with the attack, decay, sustain, release, and the simple things. Keeping the decay time up, the attack time I kind of want to increase a little bit. I want to take the release time down, as well as the decay time to go up, and the sustain value to stay up. So Now when I play the chords, they'll have a much different amount of time to increase the attack time. You can also mess about with the filter. So yeah, that's the basics of Zin. Now you notice these chords don't really amount to anything. They don't sound quite like future bass, and that's because there is no effect of the drums on the chords. So you'll want to add a peak controller. Just want to interrupt this part here. This is the finished project, but when I've been adding controllers to things, it hasn't shown up because of the way I was recording the video. So when you have a peak controller, you want to connect things, then you'll go into the controller you want, right click, as you can see now. You'll click connect to controller. So if I remove that, you'll connect to controller, click user controller, controller 1 or controller 2 or whatever. So whenever I mention that and you see me clicking in space, then that's what I'm doing. So to add a peak controller, you just go into the kick, type in peak controller in the effects, change the modulation amount to -1. I'm going to click stay on top here, and then you connect whichever. I'm going to connect this to the effects rack, the effects mixer. This is going to be the saw. Add an amplifier, right click, click connect to controller, select user controller, controller 1. That will connect the amplifier to the peak controller. So whenever the kick drum sounds, if I click stay on top for that as well, whenever the kick sounds, so that sounds much better. Sometimes you'll want a different effect coming from the chords, which is what I'm going to do now. So you won't want a peak controller from the kick itself. You'll want a peak controller that reacts to a certain rhythm. So I'm going to clone this track to save time, just to check. This one is the peak controller, so I'm going to change that to peak. Controls of the peak controller. Select mute effect. Then I can have this kick drum, disconnect this from the effects mixer, have this kick drum as the actual kick, and this one as the peak controller for my saw. So now I can change the rhythm of this to be like so. And now it should sound so you can tell that you can play around with this and make certain effects from just the rhythm of the peak controller. So I might just have these two like that, and then so as you can see, changing the rhythm of the peak controller changes the volume of the super saw at that particular rhythm, and it can make a good effect. What you can do is also add frequency to the peak controller. So for example, in the actual kick, add a peak controller, change the value to -1, and again with the saw, connect the frequency, connect to controller, user controller, controller 2. This will connect the original kick to the frequency, and it can have a cool effect. So and if I add some more kicks towards the end, then that will change the effect quite a lot and really work. So this can really change the value of your song very quickly and simply, so it's a good thing to add. Okay, so you'll be wanting to add some sort of bass into your track. So let me go into my presets and triple oscillator. Having a look at the default presets. Future bass. That's fitting. Turn that off. Changing to sine waves can give you a good bass. Obviously, I'd spend more time on this and looking at the chords. Putting it up an octave can really change the you can really hear what the bass melody is like. Make sure it works. So now I have a bass line. You might want to add some sort of arpeggio. So to change this, you can change the release, change the decays, change the sustain. I'm going to add this to the effects rack and add a reverb. Okay, you'll want a lead as well, probably. Just take any preset from here, fiddle about with it. That's all I can say, really. Mess about with functions, any effects that are already on there. Just messing about with attack, delay, hold, decay, sustain, all of that. I've got a previous video on that you can watch. So my final result is this. So if I was making this as an actual song, I would spend a lot more time on it, edit each individual drum and change the volumes levels a bit more, add sidechain, compress it all, make sure all of the mixing is right and all of that. But as this is just a tutorial, that's the basic structure of what I would do if I were to make a future bass track. I hope these techniques have helped you, and see you in the next video.